You ever have that one neighbor who just can't mind their own business? You know, the type who watches your house more than her own, thinks the HOA badge makes her a deputy sheriff, and believes your property is somehow her personal project. Well, buckle up, because this isn't just another Karen tale. This is the story of how one woman's obsession with control turned criminal, and how I made sure she'd never forget the consequences. It started the week after I moved into the neighborhood. Now, mind you, I bought this house fair and square cash deal, no mortgage, closed in 2 weeks. I thought I was stepping into a quiet suburban community. Instead, I stepped into Karenland, a place where a bored middle-aged woman with a clipboard thought she ruled the world. Her name was Linda, but everyone called her Karen, and she wore that nickname like it was a badge of honor. Her house was directly across from mine, and from day one, she was watching. Every trip to the mailbox, every package delivery, every car parked in my driveway. And by day 3, she was at my door with the HOA welcome packet, which was basically a rulebook with more restrictions than a prison yard. Hi. Just thought I'd stop by to introduce myself and drop off the guidelines, she said with a smile so fake it could have been molded from plastic. We like to keep things neat and tidy around here. Hope you're not planning to paint your door black again, like in the photos. That's when I knew we had a problem, but I'm a calm guy. I smiled, said thanks, and closed the door. I didn't even have a black door. She must have been stalking old real estate listings. Still, I played it cool. I installed cameras. I kept everything above board. But no matter how quiet I stayed, she was always in my business. Then came the landscaping incident. I had a contractor redo the front yard, simple stuff. Mulch, a few shrubs, a flagstone path. But Karen flipped. Said it wasn't community standard, that I should have submitted a modification request, and that she'd report me to the board. Let her. I didn't violate any bylaws. But that just made her angrier. She escalated. She started leaving anonymous notes in my mailbox typed, but I recognized her flowery language. She sent me emails from a fake HOA account threatening fines. I had to double-check with the real HOA to confirm they weren't from them. They weren't. They said she wasn't even on the board anymore. She'd been removed 2 years ago. So now I was dealing with an ex-HO, a member acting like she still had power. I filed a harassment complaint, but it didn't stop her. No, Karen wasn't just obsessed. She was delusional. Then, one weekend, I went out of town for a wedding. My flight landed late Sunday, and I pulled into the driveway around midnight, exhausted and ready for my own bed. But when I tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. I looked down. The locks had been changed. At first, I thought maybe my key jammed. I tried again. Nothing. Then I checked my Ring camera feed, and there it was. Broad daylight, Saturday afternoon. Karen with a locksmith standing on my porch. She's holding papers, talking animatedly. 30 minutes later, the guy hands her new keys, and they leave. She broke into my house. She broke into my house. I was stunned. Angry didn't even begin to cover it. I called the police immediately. Showed them the footage, the emails, the fake notices. But here's the thing, she didn't just change the locks. She'd gone inside. Drawers were open. Stuff had been moved. My safe had been tampered with. The cops dusted for prints, took photos, and launched a formal investigation. And what I didn't know then? Karen had made a massive mistake, one that would flip the whole situation upside down. Because I wasn't the only person she'd done this to. But before I get to that bombshell, let me tell you what happened the next morning. Karen came strolling up to the house like she owned the place. I was standing on the porch with 2 officers and a locksmith. She had the audacity to say, "I'm so glad you're here. I filed an abandonment report. You'd left your home unoccupied for more than 48 hours, which violates community policy. We had to take control for security reasons." I almost laughed. I looked at the officers, waiting for them to say something. And then, like music to my ears, one of them stepped forward, said, "Ma'am, you are under arrest for breaking and entering, unlawful entry, and impersonating an HOA officer." Corinne's face went ghost white. The handcuffs clicked, and that moment was pure satisfaction. But like I said, this rabbit hole went deeper than I imagined. Because what we uncovered after her arrest turned this from a crazy neighbor story into something way darker. You ever hear someone say, "That lady's got skeletons in her closet"? Well, turns out Corinne didn't just have skeletons, she had a whole graveyard. Because after she was arrested for breaking into my home and changing my locks, everything began to unravel like a cheap sweater. And what we discovered, it didn't just get her a mugshot, it got her a one-way ticket to complete public humiliation. So after the cops took Corinne away in cuffs, me still standing there on my front porch, stunned and weirdly relieved, the real investigation started. That Ring doorbell footage wasn't just damning, it was golden. The police reviewed every second, her fake paperwork, her speech to the locksmith, her smug little smirk like she was doing a community service project. But here's the twist. When the locksmith who changed my locks was brought in for questioning, he spilled everything, and he had receipts, literal receipts. Corinne had told him she was the legal proxy for the HOA, that I had abandoned the home, and that they were authorized to secure the property. She even forged a letter with an HOA letterhead. What she didn't know, that locksmith kept a copy of the ID she presented. She used her real name. That was her first fatal mistake. But it got crazier because the HOA board got involved, and they weren't happy. Apparently, she'd been pretending to be an active board member, not just with me, but with several neighbors. She'd sent warnings to people about their mailbox heights, lawn decorations, even bird feeders. She used old templates, logos from years back, and she was signing the emails as Vice President of HOA Compliance. One family down the street, an elderly couple, had torn out their rose bushes because of a threatening letter she sent. Another neighbor had canceled a patio renovation fearing she'd be fined. Corinne had created an entire shadow government within our neighborhood, ruling through fear and fraud. And now, all of it was being dragged into the light. The best part? People started talking. Once word got around that she'd been arrested for breaking into my home, neighbors came forward with their own stories. Some had saved the letters. Some had cameras that caught her snooping through their yards. One neighbor even had footage of her peeking through their bedroom window for safety inspections. This wasn't just HOA madness. This was obsession, but the real kicker? She had a room in her house dedicated to HOA operations. Not a joke. The police obtained a warrant, and what they found inside was a wall full of documents, printouts of everyone's property records, maps of the neighborhood, violation logs she made herself, and worst of all, copies of people's mail. That's when the federal agent stepped in. Tampering with mail? That's a felony. The woman who once screamed about people leaving trash cans out for 2 minutes too long was now facing a dozen charges: fraud, impersonation, unlawful surveillance, mail theft, and of course, breaking and entering. Still, she acted like she was the victim. Now, the news caught wind of it. Of course they did. A middle-aged woman with a short haircut, armed with fake HOA letters and a delusion of control, breaking into homes and changing locks. It was the perfect storm for viral media. I'll never forget seeing her mugshot on the evening news. She looked like someone had taken her sense of superiority and run it through a shredder. That smug grin was gone, replaced with confusion, rage, and just a tiny glimmer of reality. But it didn't stop there. At the next actual HOA meeting, yes, the real one, dozens of neighbors showed up. More than I'd ever seen before. They demanded answers, accountability, and protection. And then, someone proposed what might have been the single greatest HOA vote in neighborhood history. They passed a new bylaw: no resident may hold any HOA title or committee seat for more than 2 consecutive years. And anyone found impersonating an officer will be banned from any leadership position. Permanently, they named it Karen's Law. I didn't even vote. I just smiled. And just when I thought this whole roller coaster was over, I got a letter, not from Karen, no. This one was from her lawyer. A desperate cease and desist order, claiming I had defamed her character by speaking to the media. I didn't even reply, because 2 days later, I got a certified letter from the district court. Karen was officially being charged with 8 separate counts, and her lawyers. Cease and desist? Tossed out like last year's junk mail. At her hearing, she actually tried to argue that I had provoked her into taking over my home, that I was uncooperative with community policies, and that she was just ensuring safety. The judge didn't buy a word. Instead, he gave her the ultimate sentence: 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, mandatory psychological evaluation, and a restraining order from me, and from the entire neighborhood. She had to move. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac, was forced to sell her house, pack her matching floral curtains, and leave the neighborhood she thought she controlled. The woman who once told me, "I hope you don't plan to paint your door black again," now couldn't even enter the subdivision without risking arrest. And I threw the biggest housewarming BBQ this place had ever seen. Everyone came, even the folks I hadn't met yet. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to a Karen-free neighborhood. I even put up black shutters. Just for her, you know, sometimes. You move into a new home expecting peace and quiet, but end up getting a showdown worthy of a crime documentary. But here's what I learned. Always keep the receipts. Always install cameras. And never, ever underestimate the crazy that can come with a clipboard. Because when HOA Karens go too far, they eventually fall harder than they ever thought possible. And I'll be right here to change the locks back.